Welcome to Paperbound Realms, where fiction isn't just something you read.
It's something you experience, explore, and have fun with. I'm Brian.
I'm Frosty. How's it going today, Brian?
It's going, brother. How you doing?
Doing all right, doing all right. Glad to be in this space again talking about books, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting. Our second video to this thing. So it's been a ride getting here and but I'm so excited again to just kind of be able to nerd out somewhere and talk about
Yeah,
all the fun books and things and
it's
so
nice to have this opportunity to just kind of talk about what we're into and passionate about. But something they don't really warn you about is how much work actually goes into this, getting it started and figuring
oh yeah.
everything out.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. It's all the planning and stuff, but it's really fun though. It's something
It is.
different
Yeah,
and it's just kind of a nice breakaway from, the usual routine. So really,
yeah,
really
definitely.
cool to be here. Yeah.
Well, speaking of being here, what are we talking about today?
Well, you kind of go, life catches up with you and you get caught in kind of a routine and then before you know it, reading becomes a chore.
Yeah,
So
that's very true.
yeah, today we're just going to kind of talk about why we think people fall off reading and some of those different issues and how to maybe get back, how to pull back into the book some. So,
Yeah, and I can speak from a lot of personal experience in this matter, and I'm sure you can too. But I definitely had a good chunk of my life where I did kind of fall off reading. There was a
mhm.
book or two here and there that I would keep up with, but yeah, it was a good 8 or 9 years where I didn't read much. So firsthand
Yeah,
experience, definitely. I think some of the things I was guilty of are the big one everybody talks about: doom scrolling on social media, scrolling
yes,
through the reels, the talks, the
yeah.
shorts, and before you know it, you've watched 100 videos in 2 hours, and you're like, "Oh, where'd the time go?"
Yeah. Yeah, I had to kind of watch myself too because then you think about it, you're scrolling, especially TikTok where there's short videos and they're happy, angry, sad, happy, angry, and then by the time you're done, you're just emotionally frazzled,
Yeah,
So for me it's a big challenge that I have, well, with the technology because games, I'm a big
yeah,
gamer, love, and the thing is I'm sure you can relate. We're old, getting a little older now. Games used to be 10.
watch
Yeah,
it, watch it.
you know. But for real though, like you
Yeah,
think about it, when we were kids, gaming, average game was 10, 20, 25 hours
right.
maybe, and now you go on Steam and you have people with, 3,000 hours and wrapped up in a game, and so of course with the that's kind of how I unwind, but the time aspect, being a dad and work and all that stuff, so
And speaking on
it's
the gaming front, people that have thousands of hours, that's not just multiplayer either. That's single player adventure games now. The maps
yep.
and the tasks are so spread and huge that even single player games, you can easily put 150 hours into a game these days, which,
Dude, have you looked at the reviews on Steam for Skyrim?
no, not
Like,
in a while.
I mean, it is crazy. I don't know where people. I mean, of course, it's been out for a long time, but with mods and everything
Yeah.
else, and so that's kind of another uh, cool breakaway with our YouTube channel. Is it kind of pulls me out of just going to games,
True.
and
Yeah.
books kind of in some way for me, like my biggest draw to games is the stories. I love the
Right.
lore. I love, like for me, I very seldom rush through a game. I'm a side quest guy. I'm like that, ooh, piece of candy, ooh, piece of candy. And then before I know it, I'm like, hold on, what was I even originally doing? Um,
And we're
so
not here
it's
to demonize any of these things either. Like you and I still
no,
play
no,
games together on console and on PC. We're,
absolutely,
we're just kind of discussing more about how we manage our distractions if we want
yeah,
to be readers.
yeah,
And even like a game like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you're talking about doing all the side quests. That's maybe 35 to 40 hours of story, maybe 50 if you stretch it out. I have
Yeah.
150 hours in that game by itself. So
Oh,
even if you sit down with the best intentions, you just get
yeah.
lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's easy to, but it's
It's
just like any other hobby, whether
right.
it's playing music, playing sports, whatever. It's always easy when you enjoy those things for it to override other hobbies or interests,
Right.
like for me I would say reading is it's a hobby and it's an interest, but my biggest issue too, where I kind of fall off with reading, is I'm into so much other stuff.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I also play music and I write, and and I do a lot of that kind of thing too. So trying to divide my time up, and some of the people out there too who are homeowners and things like that, that's another, there's always something to fix.
Right. Yep.
There's always things that you break. And so, that's kind of, that's a few of the things that are personal to me. I'd be
Sure.
curious, what are some of the things our audience runs into, in our community. What kind of things do you guys, what stops you guys from getting back into reading, and how are you overcoming those? But yeah, it's been interesting. But the thing is reading's cool because I always end up going back to it.
Okay.
Even though there's a break, there might be a good stretch, or even where I take a break in a book because of life.
Yeah.
But it's always something that there's just like little spark that's in me. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna read today. It's been a week or a couple weeks or a month or whatever, and then I start diving back in. So it's cool that it's always there. you know.
Yes. Oh yeah. The library always gets bigger, even if you're not reading. It just you come back like I don't remember having this many books. It's always going
Yeah,
to be there.
absolutely.
But no, you're absolutely right with the aspect of family and friends, obligations. You always have chores and projects, and
And then the mental fatigue too.
of course, yeah,
Working and all that. You've only got so much energy and mental capacity too, because I'll be honest with you, there's even days, and I'm sure you can relate, because you work and have a lot of things that you manage. So sometimes when you get home, you're just like, I just want quiet.
and
And
you would think that's the best time to read, but what ends up happening is, okay,
yeah,
you pass out, you're asleep.
when but that's what Mortimer Adler talks about in How to Read a Book too, is it's not a
Okay,
completely passive,
right,
you can't read completely passively. It's impossible. There's always some part of you that has to be actively engaging,
that's true.
and that's not just nonfiction. I mean, even fiction, there is a little bit of work involved to get the most out of it.
Absolutely.
Um, because I don't know, I'm sure you've been there too, where you're reading a book or like a page and you realize you've read the same line like three times, because your
Yep.
brain's just not, it's not working right now. Or you're just like, you'll get through like a chapter and then you stop and you're just like,
What did I
what the
just
heck
read?
did I just read? Yeah. So I do that too. And then I think there's a lot of pressure. I do feel like, with social media and things, there's all these recommendations and
Yes,
reviews. And don't get me wrong, I think they're amazing. I'm so glad that people put that content out there. It's awesome. But there is a lot of, hey, you should read this, or hey, you should read, and then before you know it, again, ooh, piece of candy, ooh, piece of candy. And then you end up with a huge library of books, and a massive backlog. And I'm bad about that too, skipping when I get kind of overwhelmed. Like, oh my God, I just bought 17 books from. Well, no, I haven't bought 17 books, but you buy a lot of them, and then you're just like, okay, where do I start?
yeah.
And so I call it cereal box syndrome. When you're in the cereal aisle and there's 11,000 types of cereal, and then you end up picking like nothing for 20 minutes because you're like, so.
The employees are walking by going, "Are they okay?"
Right, sir, do you need help? You have no idea.
And
So,
that's something that I had to reevaluate a little while ago when I made reading an even bigger part of my routine and everything is how do I catch myself? Like, where do you draw the line from, okay, this is a priority, this needs to get done, and maybe I'm wasting time. Maybe instead of doing this, I can read
Yep.
or calm my mind or whatever. And yeah, absolutely, like reevaluating a week, the past week, going through and being like, well, I did spend an hour and a half just scrolling on social media on my phone, and then I spent another 2 hours watching a few episodes of a TV show,
Hmm.
or I decided to go do this thing out and about. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But if you want to prioritize reading, maybe put the phone away for an hour every day and just focus on
Yeah.
reading. Maybe only watch 2 episodes of the show instead of four. If you don't
Hmm.
need to go out and go to this place, save it for the next trip. Save it for the next time
Yeah.
you go buy groceries or you need to leave the house for some reason. Save it on your way home from work one night instead of making an extra trip. And just take an hour. It doesn't need to be a long time. You can read a chapter
Right.
or two of a book in an hour, and just set aside a little bit of time. And the
Hmm.
more you practice that, you might find yourself setting aside more and more time. Now you're on your phone even less, or now you're watching TV even less, or whatever the case may be. It's something that you really do have to kind of sit down and at least in my opinion, kind of
Yeah.
evaluate where your time is going and where you can squeeze in an hour before bed, before you're too tired to read, to maybe get a couple of chapters in and,
Oh yeah.
and just enjoy
Yeah.
yourself.
Well, and I mean, for me, like a couple things that kind of help me bounce back
Hmm.
and get back into reading is taking that pressure off of myself. Like reminding myself, dude, read because you enjoy it.
True,
Like
very true.
remember why you're reading and take that pressure off and read things you enjoy. Like
Yes.
again, it's fantastic that apps like Fable and Goodreads and you know Book Talk and all this other stuff. I think it's really cool, but remember, it's it's your time, so read the things that you connect with. And you may not know. Like for instance, I haven't read horror. For all I know, I'm gonna go into it and be like, whoa, like that's gonna be my new, but for now I really am heavily stuck on like I love sci-fi. I
Yes.
love the sci-fi stuff. So that's kind of my niche right now. Like I'm just kind of absorbing a bunch of cool various sci-fi books
Yeah.
and stuff. Um, so take that pressure off. Start small. That's the other thing too. 10 or 15 minutes. I'll tell you something that was really cool. So we had tickets to a theater. We
Okay.
bought season tickets, and I'm sitting there and we would get there really early.
Okay.
Go get drinks, blah blah blah. So anyway, I'm sitting there and there's this older gentleman next to me, and he's just like on his phone, and he's going, oh, and then he'll read again. He's like, oh my gosh! I'm like, and I couldn't help it. I said, "Sir, are you okay?" And he goes, "This book," and I'm
Oh
like,
wow.
"Book." So anyway, I got into a conversation with this guy. So while he's waiting, I mean, we're there 45 minutes or more
Oh
before this
okay.
show starts. So he downloaded the Kindle app on his phone. So
Oh
he
yeah.
could have easily been on Facebook or whatever, but to just chunk a couple minutes in, he had it pulled up on his phone. I'm like, man,
That's
that's
awesome.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I keep the Kindle app on my phone, and when I'm at the dentist or whatever waiting in
Oh
line for
true.
food or
Yeah.
something and I get a minute to just pop it on my phone, is it ideal? No, but I'm getting more adjusted to it because
Okay.
it's like, okay, it's better than nothing. And of course, when
Right.
I have my bag, I've got like a satchel that I carry around, so I carry my book or my Kindle in that,
Okay.
to work. So then of course when I'm on lunch break or something, I can just crack it open for a few minutes and read here or there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a whole chapter at a time. If I get even a few pages in, that's a win for
That's
me
fair. That's fair.
personally. That's how I quantify it. Like if I can get a couple good pages, because I notice when I stop, it takes a little bit more to get that momentum built back up.
That's
So
fair.
how,
That's very
how
fair.
about how about you? Are you a book carrier? Do you carry your stuff or read on your phone on the go?
So it's actually funny that you mentioned that. On my phone, I don't. have the Kindle app, but I do have a few manga apps. So I'll read a lot of
Okay.
manga on my phone on the go.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I was working construction for a while, and that's not
Hmm.
exactly the environment you want to bring a book or like a e-reader because it's going to get destroyed. And even if I
Yeah.
carry a bag, the bag gets kicked around and whatever. So I I bought a Tupperware container big enough to fit the biggest book that I have. And
Okay.
and I have a Tupperware container that I keep the book inside and put that in my bag. Now that's not recommended for everybody because it's big and bulky and you need to have a pretty big bag for it. But it worked
Yep.
great for me. My books stayed in pristine condition and I could bring them to the job site. And like you said, when we have 45, 60 minutes for lunch break, I could just pop my book out and read it while I'm eating a
Hmm.
sandwich. It was pretty great. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
Look,
definitely like to keep it on the go. Yes,
and
just not as a
I
reader.
love that you say that too. Our definition of reading. Now, this may be a hot topic, but
Okay.
I consider even if you're into comic books, manga, whatever, it's still reading. It's still
Oh,
valuable.
absolutely.
There's still things that can be gleaned. And the reason I say that is because I'm a new comic nerd. Like
Right.
really got into Daredevil. My next I want to get into Nightcrawler next and
Okay.
kind of
Nice.
start diversifying, that kind of stuff. But uh, and I'm about to start. You told me about Shonen Jump. I got it downloaded. I haven't
Yeah.
got my
Yeah.
membership kicked up yet,
Okay.
but that's even a cool little app to read
Yeah.
on the go, and kicking that doom scrolling, and it's a noisy world out there.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
but
it can be a challenge to find that moment of quiet to where you can really focus on something that's not necessarily draining, but it's so worth it.
yes,
It's so worth it when you find and make the time to do that.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's definitely a rewarding thing, and you never know where it'll lead you. There
Right.
may be something in that story that connects. There's been times I've done that where I'll read a really great story and it has a theme or a trope, and I'm like, hey, that's really cool. And I'll find other stories that kind of have that same
Yeah.
essence, sort of. And maybe that's a topic for later. Some of the tropes and things that we really enjoy. But yeah, following a thread. Following a
Right.
thread in books that you really like. I mean, I can't stress it enough. Just taking that pressure off is a huge relief. It's like I said in one of our previous videos that you know with Goodreads, I still love Goodreads, but I was reading for numbers, that
Right. Right.
pressure. And so I started to really like, and I'm not a fast reader by any stretch too. I
Oh,
was just
same
trying
same
to
here.
do like, yeah, I was trying to just do like one book a month. But then when I
Okay.
got
Yeah.
behind, I was like beating myself up like, man, last year I got 8, and this year I wanted 12. And so, I kind of fell into that rabbit hole for a little bit. But for me, it's just, again, cultivating better habits for myself. And
Right.
again, this isn't me demonizing technology or anything else. I,
Of
I
course.
think it's wonderful and all of that, but just really prioritizing what I want. Like I've noticed in the short, especially with fiction, which was really surprising to me at first, but how my vocabulary has changed in some ways,
Yeah.
and then how I think about certain things. I feel like I think differently now. There are
That's good.
studies where they talk about books making you more empathetic, and I guess
Right.
it may have worked somewhere along the way for me
Yeah.
because
No,
like
definitely.
the way that I think about certain things, it's like, and it could be a little bit of age too mixed in there, but I think
Sure. It definitely the books definitely help though.
they do help a lot, and reading and seeing the world through the characters' eyes has been a whole new enjoyment for me too. Like
Yeah.
really putting yourself in that book, in that character, and it's kind of interesting the things you can even learn about yourself
Yeah.
through their stories that way.
That's one of my
Um,
favorite things to do when I'm reading is like, okay, if this was me in this
mhm.
situation, what would I do? How would I
Yeah,
handle this differently? Like, yeah, I
yeah,
love that getting into the mind of the character, and
absolutely. Because
especially if
before it was
there's
just it was just
Okay.
like a movie, and then now
Right.
going into that character, it opens the whole. It's a whole different story almost, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the different perspectives. We touched about this a little bit in a previous conversation, but how you read a scenario versus how I read it could be completely different. So
Yeah,
there's the scenario or the perspective of the character and the author, plus yours, plus mine, plus somebody else. So it's pretty neat how it all comes
yeah,
together.
yeah.
But
Um,
also
I,
talking about the pressures, I think that's another big topic too. The pressures of the modern world, even in the reading community, I think could be a big reason why people are either afraid to get into reading or they kind of fall off of reading because
mhm.
there's not only pressure of influencers and videos and blogs and whatever else saying, hey, read this, hey, read that, hey, read this, but also the pressure of I don't know what to call it, but there's a lot of pressure if you're into sci-fi, you have to read so and so author. Or if you're into fiction, you have to read the classics. Or if you're
Oh
into whatever,
yes,
you
yeah,
have to read this and you have to read that. Otherwise, you can't say you're into it. There's a lot of
yeah.
weird pressure in the community with that as well. And it's unfortunate because, again, like you mentioned earlier, it's better to find books that you are going to read because you enjoy them than books that you're being told to read because everybody thinks it's hot and popular right now, or everybody thinks if you like one, you have to like the other. And if you're not reading for your own enjoyment, you're not going to stick with it because, like you said in the
No.
very beginning, it becomes a chore. Now it's like, oh, I have to do this.
Now you're dominated by that fear of missing out,
Sure,
and
yeah, FOMO's a huge thing. Absolutely.
yeah, and I've been there. I've been there where it's like, oh, if you'll see these reoccurring titles and authors and stuff that people
Right.
really push. And if you do try it, let's, kind of play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Let's say you do try it, you do give in. It may not be for you, and that's okay as well.
Right.
And another thing, kind of from my perspective, uh, area of intimidation.
True.
Some of the book community out there, they are so smart and they're
Yeah.
great readers and they've been reading for a long time and they're very fast.
Oh yeah.
Like there was one interview that I saw with this guy. It was like had to have been like an 1,100-page book. He's like, "Oh yeah, I started this last Thursday and I'm on the last chapter." And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, "What am I doing with my life?" Because I don't read anywhere. That would take me 6 months, but that's okay. You
Of
know,
course it is. Yeah. Yeah.
people reading at a different level, but hearing these people and how quickly and how they see things and do things, like making that story a part of your own journey
Right.
and enjoying it is part of also taking that pressure off. It's good to try new things, it's great to try new genres, but it's also okay not to be that invested in them too. Like if it's
Right.
just not for you, that's fine. That's the beautiful thing about books. I mean, you can go on Kindle Unlimited, audiobook. Not only is there millions and millions of books out there, but there's a million different ways to access them and to, have them in your back pocket even. So, but not letting that intimidation factor keep you from reading as well, because you're missing out
Yes.
on some really cool stuff by doing that. Um,
And something
but
beautiful about the book community, if you are not following people who are reading the latest and greatest, I promise you there are tons of people still out there reading the same stuff you are that you can
yeah,
talk to and you can share with.
yeah,
And there are people out there who are reading books written 100 years ago, written or published yesterday. Like you
yeah.
will find people to discuss these things with and to share your enthusiasm with, no matter what you're reading, the genre, any of it. There's people out there for all of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, everything from classics to even some of the stuff you've never even heard of. That's the thing that I've really enjoyed with Fable is how people can post like their favorite quotes. And I'm
Yes, yeah.
seeing books that are like old autobiographies by like Benjamin Franklin on there. And you're like, what? But, and the other thing too, I will say another good piece of advice on, I will read before bed now
Okay.
as a dad, all that. That's my time. Prior to that, I tried to make reading an experience.
Okay.
So I get, and you'll see it all over Fable too, how people will have like a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and a nice blanket. They try to get themselves into this like cozy, relaxed, space. And
Right.
that was kind of my thing. Basketball shorts, a tank top, and a cup of tea, and my couch, and then my furry dog sitting on my lap. That's when my brain and body knew, like, brother, get ready because you are going on an adventure right now,
It's
and
time to read.
it is time to read, and so yeah, and talk about it with people,
Yes.
like even if they're not like my wife. She's a huge Harry Potter nerd,
Okay.
loves Harry Potter. Um, and I'll talk to her about some of the sci-fi stuff or Lord of the Rings or whatever, and then she'll kind of throw back with Harry Potter, and
Sure.
we
Yeah.
kind of have these little intertwined conversations about
That's
the
cool.
hero's journey and things like that. So it's kind of fun to also swap notes with people
Right.
because I haven't gotten that far. I think I've read the first 2 or 3 books of Harry Potter, and then I kind of fell off a little bit.
Okay.
Um, but we still talk about it, and I still enjoy. I still enjoy living vicariously in that world through her eyes because
Yes.
she's
Yeah.
really invested. She almost treats it like Bridgerton or something. We're like, I cannot believe that this teacher. I'm like, like you are in it. You're in it to win it right now. So
That's great though. I love the enthusiasm. Like that's
yeah.
what we live for.
It's infectious, and those kinds of people are out there everywhere.
Yes.
There may be somebody right now watching this video that thinks there's nobody to talk to and gush about their favorite book, but I guarantee somewhere on this wonderful planet there's another human like, man, I really wish I could talk to somebody about that autobiography by Benjamin Franklin right now.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter how niche or weird or whatever. I'm almost certain there's somebody out there that would, through Fable, Goodreads, local book club community on Facebook. They're out there, and it's just awesome. There's like a little place for everybody.
And that's why we're here. That's why we're
Yeah,
we're trying to build a community so like we
right.
can we can all come together and talk about
Yeah,
these books and these stories and
yeah.
yeah, I'm a
Speaking of
huge
books,
champion
so
for. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm just saying I'm a huge champion for Fable and even
oh yeah,
Bookstagram is what they call it. I've met a
absolutely.
lot of cool people in those platforms, so it's yeah,
they've
they're
done
definitely out there.
they've done an awesome job making it fluid, and the
Yeah.
community is warm. And again, we're not sponsored, but if you're looking for a warm place to talk about books and an open community and all that, please, if you don't even have friends on Fable, find Frosty or I on there. I would love to talk to you about books. Here are your favorite quotes. Who's your favorite
Yeah.
characters? I love that sort of thing. um, but I did want to ask you,
Okay.
so before we wrap this stuff up, did you
Okay.
finish the ritual?
I did actually. I finished it today.
How was it?
Without doing a full on review and without spoiling anything, I am
Right.
going to say this. The intro and build up in the book were fantastic.
Hmm.
The ending, I actually prefer the ending of the movie than the book.
Really?
Yeah, it's weird saying that because normally it's the other way around. The book is always better than the movie. In this case, personally, I prefer the ending of the movie.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
on my radar. I put that on my backlog, but I haven't seen the movie either, so maybe I'll start with the book and then go. That's how I typically do it: book then movie. But
I think you should. I think you should start with the
yeah.
book and afterwards watch the movie, compare and contrast. I did appreciate how much deeper into the psyche of the characters the book went versus the movie. But I think the movie, obviously, you don't have enough time for that. But the movie, the way it wrapped everything up, made more sense to me, and I
Mhm.
enjoyed it more. Not that the ending of the book was bad. Both are thoroughly enjoyable, and I will always recommend both because they
Yeah.
honestly are both great. But yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm kind of I like one aspect of one and one aspect of the other. So
Torn a little bit. You know?
Yeah, it was interesting. I did power
Yeah.
through like the last 140 or 50 pages today, so I kind of crammed that all into one reading session. So maybe after I have another day or two to kind of decompress and think about it more, it'll make a little more sense. But no, I finished the ritual today, and my next smaller read while I'm still reading the Fellowship of the Ring will be What Moves the Dead
Nice. Okay.
by T. Kingfisher. I don't know anything about that, so I can't offer a synopsis. I have no idea what
Okay.
it is. It was one of those
Yep.
books in the chain bookstore where they're like, "Hey, you're buying a coffee at the cafe. You can also get this for $5." I said, "Ha, do it."
Yep.
So, I think it's supposed to be a little more on the creepy side. I don't think it's necessarily horror, but it's a
Mhm.
short read. It looks interesting, and I've heard good things about the author themselves. So,
That's wonderful.
looking forward to diving into that one next. How about you?
Yeah.
How's the progress going with your books?
So I like Lord of the Rings.
Of course.
Um, we're probably gonna get hate mail already because
Uh
there is
oh.
one. My biggest. So in the Hobbit, there's a lot of like poetry and
Right.
songs and all of this stuff. I didn't really expect because Hobbit was written for kids and all that. I really didn't expect that level of whimsy in Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
So you know, I'm I'm
Careful.
I'm a
Careful.
little over I'm a little over halfway through.
Okay.
But the thing is do you remember the Skittles commercial with the berries and cream guy? Did you ever see that? Early
No.
2000? Okay. That
No.
I get it's this little guy and he's dressed like a little like I don't know, pilgrim or something. And he comes up and
Okay.
he's like, berries and cream, berries. And there's certain parts in Lord of the Rings, I get that kind of vibe. Like they're in this really dark, dank forest. Light spoiler alert, they met Tom Bombadil
Okay.
and it's dark, it's dreary, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Ooh, Tom Bombadil," da, da, da. And they're like, "Really?" So it kind of just pulls me out of the story almost because they're and
Okay.
it's and it's like made up words, so they're like "diddly dee, you can't catch me" or something like crazy. And I'm just like, okay, it just didn't like, it just didn't fit. So, but the story
Okay.
I'm loving the story and like the settings and the characters, but yeah, the poetry is well written, but that is definitely my biggest hurdle. Like
Okay.
reading Tolkien right now, it's like you have this really dark, and then of course I did it backwards, movie then book, and some
Right.
parts of
Same
the
here.
movie can be kind of heavy and brooding and all of that,
Right.
and it's really reflected well in the book. But then, like I said, then you break that kind of immersion with these over the top whimsical songs sort of or poems, and you're just like you're getting chased by a skeleton with a sword and a shield right now. Is now really the time to be you know um
Maybe that's why
and
Jackson left them out of the movie.
yeah, that would have been great though to see Elijah Wood and them just stop in the middle of the fog covered forest to do a little dirge in the in the woods. But yeah, other than that though, I'm really liking it. I'm gonna kind of keep continuing through it. I'm like I said about 3/4 of the way through, and
Nice. Okay.
and yeah, and then How to Read a Book. Been chipping away at it too, but that one I'm reading really slow and methodically because it's not a very big book, but the concepts are pretty dense because there's a
Sure.
you know learning for information and learning for understanding. It's kind of a topic in the book, and
Yeah.
so
I see all your annotation notes in the book
yeah,
last
yeah,
time you held it up, so I know you're
yeah,
going through it piece by
oh
piece.
yeah, yeah, and maybe later we can talk about how we kind of big debate in the book community if we deface our books or not. But yeah, anyway, so that's where we're at. I'd love to hear what the community has to say. What are some of your biggest hurdles? And what do you do to overcome them? And remember to like and to subscribe to the channel so we can keep growing and keep talking about books and all this fun stuff with you guys. And we appreciate y'all being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joe, it was awesome, man. Thanks for conversating with me and breaking this topic down. It was really really cool.
Yeah, Brian, always looking forward to it, man, and
Yeah,
already looking forward to the next time we get to sit down and chat. And just
absolutely.
throwing this out there, if you guys do want to engage for right now, you can find us on Fable. I'm JRFrost Reads on Instagram. I'm also JRFrost Reads.
Yep, and I'm Brian M on Fable. Just look for the little icon with the red hair, and that's more than likely me.
But
So,
yeah, another good
thank.
chat, man. And
That's
yeah,
right.
hope you have a good rest of the evening. We look forward to hearing from all of you, and
Absolutely.
catch you in the next one.
Have a good one. Keep reading, y'all.